Everyone assumes aging in place is the safe choice. Almost nobody adds up what it actually costs. If you've ever wondered whether you should downsize or just stay put and adapt, this one's for you. We're going to look at aging in place versus downsizing and the real costs on both sides, a few government programs that can help, and how to figure out which path actually fits the life that you want next. Here's the thing that most people get wrong. Downsizing has a price tag. So does staying. The problem is most people only ever price out one of them. If you're watching this, most likely you or someone you love is probably in that in-between stage. You're not ready to say, I'm moving, but you're starting to notice things. Maybe the stairs feel steeper than they used to, or the yard feels bigger than it did 5 years ago. And here's the distinction that actually matters. The question? It isn't, can I stay in my home? Because in most cases, you probably can. The better question is, what would it take to stay here comfortably and safely? And does that still make sense for the life you want going forward? So instead of jumping straight to the emotional question, stay or go, let's start somewhere more useful. Let's figure out what staying would actually involve. Here's a mistake I see constantly. People treat aging in place like it's one renovation. It isn't. It's a whole spectrum, from a few small safety tweaks all the way up to rebuilding how your home functions. On the small end, you're looking at better lighting, grab bars installed properly, lever-style door handles, a comfort height toilet, clearing out trip hazards. These are relatively inexpensive and honestly, changes most people should make anyway. Then it scales up fast. A stair lift alone can run you $8,000 to $25,000 depending on whether your staircase is straight or curved, short or long. Bathrooms are the other big one. A safer shower, grab bars, better lighting. That part's fairly straightforward. But a fully accessible bathroom, such as curbless showers, wider doorway, plumbing, and layout changes, well, now you're into $10,000 to $25,000 or more. This is no longer a small renovation moment. And then there's the bigger question. What if your bedroom is upstairs? What if getting into the house means several steps? What if the hallways are too narrow or too twisty to navigate with a walker or wheelchair down the road? Now you might be looking at a stair lift, ramps, a main floor bedroom, a full main floor bathroom, a main floor laundry room, maybe even widened hallways. At that point, this isn't a renovation anymore. It's a whole home retrofit, and it can get expensive. You're essentially redesigning the house around how you need to live in it, not just how you live in it now. Retrofit might be completely worth it, but you need the real number before you decide, not a guess. My advice? Get actual quotes from professionals. Don't work off averages you found online. Now, for some good news. There are programs out there that can help offset some of this, though every program has its own qualifying rules around income, health, and care needs. So don't assume you'll automatically qualify. The Federal Home Accessibility Tax Credit, or HATC, helps with the cost of permanent renovations that make a home safer or more accessible, and you can claim up to $20,000 in qualifying expenses. But here's the part people get wrong. That doesn't mean you get $20,000 back. It's a non-refundable federal tax credit. That means it reduces the taxes that you owe up to roughly $3,000, depending on your situation. But it won't generate a refund on any unused portion. In Ontario, there's also a seniors care at home tax credit. That one's income tested and tied to eligible medical expenses. So don't assume every renovation on your list will qualify. The bottom line is talk to your accountant before you build a tax credit into your renovation budget. A credit on paper and cash in your pocket, well, they aren't always the same thing. If you're in Caledon and 65 or older, there's a free program worth knowing about. Caledon Fire and Emergency Services runs an older adult home safety program. It helps identify fire hazards, checks your safety equipment, and helps you put together an emergency plan like a fire escape route. They can also point you towards other resources if needed. Now, to be clear, this isn't an accessibility assessment. It's another piece of useful information if you're trying to figure out whether your home is genuinely working safely for you right now. And that's really the goal at this stage. Gather information before you spend a dollar. Most people weighing a renovation focus entirely on what it will cost. But there's another number worth putting next to it. What does it cost if staying at home eventually stops being realistic? In Ontario, right now, assisted living typically runs somewhere between the $4,000 to $7,000 or $8,000 monthly range, every month for as long as you need it. Run that over even 1 year, and suddenly a $40,000 renovation doesn't look like a splurge. It starts looking like one of the smarter financial moves available to you. Private retirement and assisted living costs vary a lot, depending on the residence, the location, the suite type, and how much personal care is involved. But several $1,000s a month is common in Ontario, and more intensive care pushes that number even higher. So when someone looks at a $20,000, $30,000, or $40,000 renovation and says, that's too much to put into this house, I always ask the same thing. Compared to what? If those changes keep the home workable for years to come, that money may be very well spent. But there's a catch. And this is where the decision gets personal. A renovation can solve a bathroom problem. It can solve a staircase problem, maybe even an entrance problem. But what it can't do is solve everything else that comes with owning a house. It won't cut your grass. It won't shovel your driveway. It won't maintain an acre of property. It won't clean rooms you don't use anymore. It won't replace the roof or fix the driveway. And it definitely won't move you closer to your kids, your grandkids, your doctors, or the life you actually want to be living. That's why I'd never make this decision based on renovation costs alone. Look at the whole house and the whole life around it. This shows up a lot here in Caledon, where homeowners aren't just maintaining a house. They're maintaining a much bigger property. And for some people, that's exactly what they still want to do. For others, not so much. Both are valid. Neither is wrong. Downsizing solves a different set of problems. Less property to maintain, fewer stairs, maybe everything on one level, closer to family and the things you actually use day to day. And depending on the numbers, it can free up equity to help fund the lifestyle you want next. The downsizing isn't automatically the cheaper option, and I wouldn't assume it is. You've got selling costs, buying costs, land transfer tax, legal fees, moving expenses. And depending on where you're headed, that smaller home you might have your eye on might cost more than you think. So I wouldn't tell anyone to move just because renovating sounds expensive. And I wouldn't tell anyone to renovate just because they love their house. Both decisions deserve better information than a gut reaction. Here's the question that actually matters. If your house could be made completely safe and manageable tomorrow, would you still choose to live there for the next 10 years? Sit with that for a second. If your answer is an immediate absolutely, I love it here, then figuring out what it costs to stay probably makes a lot of sense. If your answer is, I'm not sure, that tells you something too. Maybe it was never really about the stairs. Maybe you're just tired of the upkeep, the grass, the snow, the cleaning, the maintenance. Maybe you can already see the big ticket items coming: windows, roof, furnace, driveway, and you're wondering how you're going to afford those updates. Maybe you want to travel more. Maybe you want to be closer to your kids. Maybe you're using 5 rooms out of 10. Or maybe you're starting to think, I'd rather make this decision while I have plenty of choices instead of waiting until something forces my hand. That's not really a downsizing question. It's a question about how you want the next chapter of your life to feel. Here's where I'd start. If you're leaning towards staying, don't start with a big renovation. Start with an assessment of the whole property. What works, what doesn't, and what would become a problem if your mobility changed. What the real renovation cost would be, and where that money would come from. Get the actual quotes. Look into the tax credits available to you, and if you're in Caledon and 65 or older, use the older adult home safety program as part of your information gathering process. If you're leaning towards downsizing, don't start by touring homes. Start by finding out what your current home is realistically worth. Then figure out the full cost of the move you actually want, not just a purchase price, the whole number. Information doesn't commit you to anything. It just gives you choices. And that's what you want and deserve. I've put together a free downsizing guide that walks through the questions worth asking before you make this decision, and you'll find the link below. And here's what I'll leave you with. If nothing in your life changed except 10 years past, would you still choose the home you're living in today? You don't need the answer right now, but it's a really good place to start.